Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of September and the full moon that we have coming up in Pisces on the 10th. Now, I said way back in January, and you can still check it out in my themes for 2022 video that I made then, that I really felt that we'd be coming to a crescendo in these last few months of the year. And indeed, I stay by that. I stick by that, because I think October and November particularly are going to be massive months for the world. And we're starting to move into that energy now. One of the simple reasons is that we start to get into eclipse season. Really, we're feeling the energy of that already. Solar eclipse in October, and then a total lunar eclipse on the 8th of November. Important day. Huge amounts going on then, which of course I will continue to update you with as we move through the next few weeks. But even in September, the energy is ramping up. And we've got a lot of solar activity. Also, if you track that on spaceweather.com, you can see that the sun is very, very active at the moment, with a lot of M-class flares. We've had a huge M-class flare today, 7.2 magnitude. So that is increasing this sense of intense energy, and for some people jitteriness or buzziness, and that is also reflected in the astrology, as we'll see. So I think we're going to see a lot of fast moving events running into the end of the year, and potentially it would be easy, if you don't have mastery of your energy, it would be easy to feel overwhelmed that there's a huge amount of information coming in. And that is shown, as we'll see in the chart in a moment, that's shown very clearly. But it is going to increasingly unravel the old order. So the two dominant aspects that we've had for the last 2 to 3 years, I've talked about in a lot of detail since beginning of 2020. So I talked about them again in detail in the last update video, the new moon in Virgo, and I'll put that link below so I don't have to repeat everything I said last time. But broadly, Eris in Aries square to Pluto in Capricorn that we've had since beginning of 2020, still got it now, and also Saturn square Uranus all of 2021 and this year too. They are both coming back closer to exactitude. They won't perfect, they won't be exactly by minute exact in those challenging squares, but nevertheless they're coming much closer. So there's this heightened sense of crescendo, because if I had to shorthand them, it would be past versus future, control versus freedom, individual versus the state. And I think those themes are clear as day for all of us to see. So that's the sort of backdrop, the very dominant backdrop that we're with which we are moving into September. So at the beginning of the month, on the 1st, the moon, which it does very regularly in its fast orbit, triggers the Saturn-Uranus square, and then on the 6th, it triggers the Eris-Pluto square. But that's just repeating, and those days may be highlighted in the themes with the themes I've just described. But our full moon in Pisces actually happens on the 10th. So let us look at that right now. So here we go, a very busy chart, because it's a very busy energy. So this happens, as I say, on the 10th. It happens at 3 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. UK time. And again, if you're not in the UK geography, ignore the clock face, ignore the houses, just look at where the planets sit and the angles they have to each other. So this is at 17 degrees 41 minutes of Pisces. And we can see this here. And at a full moon, the sun and the moon are always opposing each other. So it's always a culmination, a full moon. So see where 1741 Pisces falls in your chart. What is culminating? What is coming to fruition? What is coming perhaps to closure? What secrets are coming to light in the light of this bright full moon that may change your course of action going forward? So that's always the case with full moons. So it's very helpful if you know where these points fall in your chart. If you don't, you can very easily download a free birth chart from my website, go to the link below, get a 2-part video series that will explain for every update I do how to find these points in your chart and what it means for you. And you start to learn, it's the beginning of your astrological journey, really. So Pisces energy is really beautiful. Pisces energy can be very spiritual, can be extremely creative, artistic. This is the sign that links to altered states, where we can kind of lose a sense of space and time. If we're sitting in nature, if we're meditating in an altered state, if we're creating, we're painting, we're drawing, we're listening to music or writing poetry, it's that kind of a drifty feeling where you're actually connecting more fully to source or to oneness or to a sense of divinity. So this is very beautiful. This also is linked to your dreams, and particularly that's the case because the moon down here is conjunct Neptune. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, and Neptune, as well as its sign Pisces, very linked to dreams. So you can get a lot of information from your dreams at this time. If you don't do it already, keep a dream diary, keep pen and paper by the side of your bed, and before you open your eyes, recall your dream. Before you even move, record your dream, and then it's easier to remember and you can write it down. Pisces also has some less positive aspects. Every sign has positive and negative, and it can be also about toxicity, about pollution of all kinds, about drugs of all kinds, addictions. It can be things not being as they seem, deceit even. And again, the full moon is likely to shine a light on that. Because Pisces and its ruler Neptune is lord of the sea, often full moons in Pisces can correlate with flooding. Now, I know probably rain would be extremely welcome because we've got severe drought in parts of the US and also parts of Europe. But if the rain comes in too quickly and the land is so hard and dry, the rain can run off and ironically cause flooding. So be aware that that's a possibility at this time. And that is kind of suggested by other things in the chart as well, particularly moon conjunct Neptune. So, but it's a beautiful energy where you just want to merge with source, get into a more refined state. It's a more refined, spiritual, creative, artistic state. Really beautiful. Now, there are many other aspects I want to talk about in the chart. You can see how busy the geometry is. There's a lot of mental energy in this chart, a lot of buzzing in the head. As I mentioned last time, Mars is in Gemini for a remarkably long time, 7 months until March 25th next year. Normally it stays in a sign for 5 to 6 weeks. So this is an incredibly long time because of its retrograde. It's going to go retrograde at the end of October. But Gemini is ruled by Mercury, again, planet of the mind, and Mars energizes wherever it sits, whichever house it's in for you, but also in the sign of Gemini, the mind is going to be very, very activated. And it's going to be a lot of new facts and a lot of new information coming in at us that we have to sift. And so very important that we use our discrimination. Sun in Virgo, we use the discrimination of Virgo to really step back and say, you know, is this true? Is this new information true? Is it true for me? And the only way you know if it's true for you is to drop into your heart, to just close your eyes and drop into your heart and really test, almost use the body as a pendulum, which some people do. They use the sway test. You know, is this really true? This new information that's coming, it will be extremely important to discern, because otherwise the overwhelm could kind of jazz you up. You know, there's a scattering effect. We have 5 planets here in mutable signs. We've got the Sun, Venus, Mars, and also Neptune, Moon, all in what are called mutable signs. Mutable means flexible, adaptable to circumstances, which is wonderful, but it can also suggest a scattered energy. It's linked to when you shine light through a prism and the energy, the light splits. It's that kind of scattering energy. So if a lot of new information is coming in and we're very kind of buzzed up in our heads and jazzed up, and is it right? Is it wrong? Is it true? Is it not? Our energy scatters outwards, and that isn't going to help us if we want to be co-creators of our world. It's the very opposite of what we want. So many things to talk about here. I mean, one of the lovely things is that the sun is in a very tight trine here to the North Node, our future collective destiny, where we're headed, and Uranus. And because that's a very positive aspect, that can be around new ideas, new information coming in, particularly around perhaps food supplies, agriculture, that is linked particularly to Taurus. We could be developing some original ideas, because I actually said back in January 2020, when we had that big Saturn-Pluto conjunction, 12th of January 2020, the Ceres, which is now at 21 of Leo, Ceres was sandwiched in between Saturn and Pluto. And Ceres is she's the goddess of harvests and grains and agriculture to some extent. And so Ceres here is being opposed by Saturn, limitation, constriction. So as we know, in our 3D world, there are some shortages around certain grains, certain produce, certain foods. And therefore, new ideas around agriculture will be very welcome. But something I find extremely interesting is we have a wonderful dwarf planet, and I am going to put the dwarf planets in where they are relevant, particularly where they form tight, hard aspects, conjunctions, squares, oppositions. Here I'm focused on the conjunctions. And again, I want to credit the work of Kelly Hunter, Kelly has done a huge amount of research into these. So I'm very much borrowing from her work. And in a moment, I'm also going to be referring to some of the work of Alan Clay, who runs the Dwarf Planet University. So I want to credit both of those wonderful astrologers. So coming back to the food issue, we have a dwarf planet here, and I've spelt it for you, so you don't need to write to it, called Teheron Hiwako. And it's at 19 of Pisces, right between the moon and Neptune. So in myth, I love the myths around these dwarf planets. In myth, Teheron Hiwako was an Iroquois farmer god, very concerned about providing seeds for the future, for people, for the food supplies, providing seeds for the future. But these creator gods are remarkable because they don't just operate on 3D principles, they go way beyond that to create. So if we can shift our consciousness, because all these Kuiper belt objects, these dwarf planets, sort of way beyond the orbit of Pluto, we can find ways to magically create seeds for the future and abundance. And that may sound pie in the sky to you. If it does, that's okay. But I know this is actually happening with groups. Once you can shift your consciousness to find a like-minded group, so much creativity and abundance is starting to happen. So much magic is starting to happen if we can shift our consciousness. I'm going to come back to that theme in a little while. But Teheron Hiwako is also linked in myth to understanding our cosmic origins. It helps to connect us to source. And it alleviates this issue, which is running more at the 3D level, of any kind of food shortage or limitation. And even that, I think, will be kind of staccato, will be short term. Saturn is squaring the nodal axis. You just see it here, square to the North Node at 16 of Taurus. But remember always that it's an axis, so the South Node is at 16 of Scorpio, which isn't normally shown in a chart. So Saturn in Aquarius is about finding new social connections. And square the nodal axis is very much about building new social networks for the long-term Saturn, building new social networks for the long term. And this really is starting to happen in so many ways and so quickly. It's absolutely thrilling, I have to say. So this is the very positive aspect here of Saturn. Coming back to Mercury. Mercury is stationary here, stationary, about to go retrograde for the next 3 weeks. So it's stronger. Any planet which is stationary is magnified. Doesn't matter which direction it's shifting in, it's magnified. And so again, we're back to this kind of buzzy mental principle. It's in Libra, again, the mind, the air signs are very linked to mind. Libra is also the sign of choice, the scales, the balance, which way do I go? So much duality here. Gemini, Pisces, Libra, all kind of have a sense of duality about them, a sense of choice. So be very, very astute in your choices, because there's already been a major fork in the road energetically, and you have to be extremely wise moving forwards in your choices. Do you choose fear or do you choose love? It's that simple. But Mercury is highlighted again because it's being opposed here by Jupiter. Jupiter 5 of Aries. Now we know, because I've spoken at length about this, Jupiter in Aries has this pioneering quality because it's the very first sign of the zodiac, this new beginning quality. And Jupiter is conjunct Salacia at 7 degrees of Aries. And Salacia is a beautiful energy. Mermaid energy, wife of Neptune in myth, linked to the iridescent sunlight and moonlight shimmering on the sea. To me, she's very linked to photonic energy, that very brilliant white light that we see around our sun, etc. But to me, she's liquid light, because she has this link to Mermaid and Neptune and the sea. She's liquid light with which we are creating our world. Because this Mercury-Jupiter opposition is about big ideas for the future, big visions for the future. Now, we have always created with light, but we've been so unaware of it. We are becoming much more aware of how we create with light going forwards. We're shifting from carbon to crystalline. This is so exciting. And the other side, but by the way, one other thing I want to say is there are two signs linked to the law. One is Libra, scales of justice, and the other is Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. So in this opposition of Mercury to Jupiter, it really is starting to suggest that we could see some legal developments happening at this time, particularly if in the bright light of this full moon, we see any deceits coming to light or any things that are not as they have seemed, let us say. So I think this is a very big theme, actually, moving forwards, particularly into the kind of turbulence of October and November. But there's another very powerful dwarf planet here, which I love, is called Orcus. And Orcus here is at 14 degrees of Virgo. Remember, all of these dwarf planets have roughly a 300-year orbit. They move very, very slowly. So when other planets come into conjunction with them, it's a big deal because they're not moving quickly enough to give us a lot of information on a kind of weekly basis. So Orcus, the purpose of Orcus is really that he punishes oath breakers, those who have violated sacred laws. He exposes any lack of integrity, which is really, as I've discussed at length, Pluto moving through the last few degrees of Capricorn does, bringing to light any lack of integrity, but he punishes those who have violated sacred laws, and he spins their souls off into the underworld. But it isn't just that very never that productive but difficult side of Orcus, but what he does from there is he only looks forward to create with love. He only looks forward to create with love. And remember, love is not this fluffy pink romantic love. Love is a state of being. Love is, you are love. You operate through your days as love. That's what that means. Very linked to the new light codes coming in, similar to Salacia. And also it's linked to sacred geometry and, again, healing using love, because love is the highest vibration. And as we move forwards, we're going to move way beyond the current health systems. We're going to be using energy medicine, very much light and sound, to heal people and take them back to the blueprint. So there's a lot here that's happening in this very busy period. And just to point out as well that we have many planets retrograde. We have Mercury turning retrograde at this full moon. We have Jupiter, we have Saturn, we have Uranus, we have Neptune, and we have Pluto. So all of those outer planets, Jupiter outwards and also including Mercury, are moving retrograde. So what this says is this is a big review time. This is a time to go back over, for all of us, for everybody. This is a time to go back over the last few months, maybe the whole of 2022, and even back further than that. And with this new information, these new facts coming in, what do we now think in this review period? How do we feel we've chosen? Have we chosen from fear or love? How is it shaping up? And it's wonderful once we start to look at these Kuiper belt objects, these outer planets that are orbiting way beyond the orbit of Pluto, largely. So it starts to change your world, because yes, they seem abstract right now because they're at a higher pitch of consciousness. But the more we can tune in to that higher level of consciousness, the better our lives become, because they really are indicating a shift from density to lightness, from carbon to crystalline. And they're quite magical. They operate in a quantum level, but also with this very instinctive ancient connection to the earth. So many of them are creator gods. And so with all of the busyness and the mental input we're going to get in the coming weeks and months, I just want you to be very cognizant of how much is coming into you. Because it is very, very easy to get scattered mentally and to leak power when there are 1,000 things to catch your attention out there. Scary things, war, disease, poverty, shortages, blah. But actually, the more we can pull back from that kind of hubbub, the better our lives will be. And I don't want those external inputs to define my state of being. I said this last time, my state of being is not being defined by the 6 o'clock news. And so what I do at the beginning of every day, as I wake up, before I open my eyes, keep them closed, and I say, I live in peace and love and bliss. I live in peace and love and bliss. And, do I feel warm and cozy? Have I got a super comfy pillow? And I milk those things. I really milk them so I can get into those very positive feelings. And that defines my tone for the day. And as I move through my day, I will deliberately exclude negative input. You can't do it completely, but I stopped watching mainstream news 2.5 years ago. Don't plan to ever listen again. And, I think my frequency jumped as a result. And the only time I hear it now is when I'm paying for petrol at my local garage and hear the radio. And I think, God, I used to listen to that every day. And the difference, how did I listen to that? It's quite a shock for me, actually. But it's also a measure, I think, of how far my frequency has changed in just doing that one thing. But I also try and control the amount of negative input in other ways. People send me scary videos, all that, isn't this really, what do you think about? Well, I don't want to be knocked off center. So I will screen those things out, and I will choose through my day. There's a very busy days, believe me, super busy days. But I will choose how I construct those days to feed the positive feelings of peace, love, and bliss in my day. So I will always be in nature in the morning, go for a walk, cycle ride, whatever. And again, I will milk it. Wow. I've talked about this before. Look how green the trees are. Look how blue the sky is. Wow, listen to those birds. It's so beautiful. Milk it, because that helps the upshift with your emotions as well. And Yes, I'm very, very lucky. I don't work in an office. I don't have to go and work in a hospital. I'm very, very lucky. But I've also deliberately, over the months and years, constructed my reality to be like that. I haven't been to a supermarket in 2.5 years. I don't plan to go again. I have my food delivered. So 3D reality for me is more and more distant. Yes, I'm aware of what's happening in the world, of course, but it's more and more distant, and it isn't hitting my energy field so personally and directly. And that's when we can develop a strong sense of center. So every day I do this, I'll think, I choose from my center what state of being I want to be in: love, joy, peace, bliss, compassion. And I beam that out to the world all day long, through my videos, through my posts, through my writing, through my interactions with people. I will beam that. I will dominate my reality with those emotions. Because not only does that make my own heart field coherent and the heart toroidal field much larger, look at the work of heart math with this, but I'm infecting everyone personally that I interact with those positive emotions, but I'm also infecting the collective very positively, invisibly at home, sitting on my sofa. But you develop a much stronger sense of my reality comes from here, not pushing people around, not bullying, none of that. Very peaceful. And the more you do that, the more you are stepping into the magic zone. Pisces, the magic zone. You meet the right people on the same wavelength, you join the right groups, you find the right circumstances, you find the right opportunities, and your life can change very quickly with that consciousness upshift. It truly can. And so I know people's circumstances are very different, but we can still be in control of our energy. We can still be in control of our frequency by not being buffeted by the external and living from the inside out rather than the outside in. And that really, and I've taken more time to share some of the personal detail there. That's what I mean about living from the inside out, not the outside in. And I will absolutely not deviate from that, because it's changing my life more rapidly than I could ever possibly believe. It does feel quite magical at times, despite living in a world which is pretty crazy, and will get crazier through October and November at the 3D level. But remember, we don't have to live there. We choose fear or we choose love as we move through our days. A lot in there today. I hope it's been really helpful for you. Really try and get out of the head with this. Bare feet on the grass. Woomph. Pull your energy into the body. Pull it out of the head and into the body. We judge best by our hearts, not by our heads. We've been way too heady for too long. And, with 1,000 things that are happening out there that are so overwhelming and scary and confusing, if you turn inwards, you get that one-pointedness. You are operating from one-pointedness, from your center of choosing your state of being for the day. It's so much simpler. God bless. If you'd like more information about my books, my long monthly newsletter, where I have less and less about current affairs, I have to say, because it's just so far away. My teaching videos, all on pamgregory.com. I am doing a live event in central Bournemouth with my good friend and colleague Sue Stone on the 18th of September. That's a live event, and so I'll put the link for that below as well. So if any of you are able to come along to that, it's going to be an afternoon of empowerment. I'm doing the first half. It's from 2 to 5. I'm doing the first half of the afternoon, and Sue is doing the second. So if you'd like to come along, I make very, very few live presentations these days because as a double Pisces, I like to just stay quiet. But so it's a nice opportunity for all of us to get together if that's possible for you. God bless. Hope this has been helpful. Bye for now.